Hello, everyone. My name is Mahan, and thank you guys for sticking around. Amazing presentation so far. Uh, I'm going to share my screen right now. All right.
Looks great. Ready when you are.
Awesome. Okay, so a little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Mahan. I work for a company called Nizek. I've been developing iOS for a couple of years, and I'm actually the youngest department manager at my company. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a very interesting concept, and that's dynamic UI. And to talk about dynamic UI, I'm going to take you to the very beginning, to the place where it started, actually. A couple months ago, maybe around a year ago, I was invited to an Uber event where they talked about a concept called API-driven UI. Now, if you haven't guessed it already, API-driven UI is basically controlling your UI components via an API. And when I listened to that idea in that like Uber conference, it dawned on me that we did actually have something very similar to it in our own company. We just called it a different thing, and it didn't specifically control our UI. Now, you might ask, what was the problem? Like, why did we even have such a thing that didn't specifically control our UI and we just called it a different thing? Why would we develop such a thing? Why would we work on such a thing? And one reason was, well, most of our applications at Nizek are e-commerce applications. And so there is a lot of change in the market. And as the market changes, the trends change as well. So we wanted to adapt our applications to match with the market. So for example, if jeans are trendy today, we would like to be able to feature jeans more broadly in our application. Maybe that needs to be the first thing that the user can see. Maybe we need to have a specific sections designed to feature them. Another very important thing was that our client would come to us and they would ask to change one UI component to another. For example, they would want a list to be changed into a grid. And well, as we all know, that's not as easy as every client seems to think. Another very important thing was A/B testing. So if you want to be able to do A/B testing, you need to have different versions, preferably controlled from the server. And so when you launch your application, different users can see different versions of your application, and you can have some actionable data based on that. So before that Uber conference, a couple of years ago, actually, we started developing this platform, developing this idea. And the whole thing was that we would decide that certain options of the application would show up or disappear based on what our server told us. So for example, imagine you have a product. Now, some of your products might have an SKU for size, and some of them might not. Whether the product has a size or not was information provided to the application by the server. So the display of the choose size field, for example, would be decided by the API. Not impressed? Guess not. This isn't a very unique so far, is it? I'm sure most of you do the same thing on a daily basis. So we took another step. You need to remember that these ideas, these steps were all before that conference. So we weren't familiar with the whole concept. We had to figure each part out as we went on. Now we had started creating dynamic home pages as our next step. The idea was that we could create components based on the design of our applications. Then the server would tell us by the API which component we were to use in the home page, and also provide us with the order of the components. But this wasn't dynamic all the way through. We still had to hard code models for each of our components, and the UI was hard coded based on that model. So, for example, again, say we want to display a list of products in our homepage. We would have a model from the server that represented something pretty much like this. As you can see, this is a very standard model. There is an ID, a name, as well as a price model, an image model, basically all we need to display that cell in front of it. So what happens is we have a model that's sent to us by the server, and it's a product model. Like you can't connect it to any other entities in your application, and it's very specific. And the UI component linked to it is very specific as well. So we thought, okay, this isn't good enough. So we sat down again and we decided, okay, we need to take another step. And we started brainstorming. And we established that, okay, our current dynamic home was something that we wanted to stick to. We also established that it hadn't completely fixed all those problems I mentioned earlier. Namely, it was still very difficult to change one component to another, for example. So once we established that, we thought, what if we take that one step further? We'll still create all the components we need, but instead of sending the model down, the server side would keep hold of the models, and it would, in fact, also keep hold of the logic and just send down the view model. So let me make an example. The server is going to send down a bunch of data, but this time the application isn't going to know what that data is going to be displaying in the application. It's not even going to know what that data is representing in the application. It's not going to know if it's a product, a category, maybe a carousel, whatever else. It's just going to be a bunch of data that the application can parse, but the nature of that data is not known to the application. So the API would just tell us that, okay, get this data. And I'm also, if I'm the server, I'm also going to tell the application that you're going to use this component to show this data, and to parse it. And then you're going to use this layout to sort of display it in your application. So let me show you how it worked. Now I'm gonna just stop the presentation right here, and I'm gonna jump into the code so I can show a couple of things to you guys. I'm also gonna put the link of the application I'm gonna be displaying, and also the packages and all that in the chat to your right-hand side, so you can have access to that. And two of the libraries, the project and a package I'm using, which some of you might be very interested in, are going to be on my own GitHub. And then there's another library which I'm using, SD Web Image. I'm just mentioning them because it's a good library. You can use it if you want. It's free to use. So, okay. I'm going to go back to code, and I'm going to share this screen right here. All right. So as you might have noticed already, I am having an Xcode canvas on my screen, but I don't have Swift UI code. When Apple introduced the Swift UI code, one of the main features that they introduced in their Xcode was the live preview canvas, which allowed developers, iOS developers, to be able to code and see the results in real time. About a month ago, I found documentation. I found some documentation, and then I found some way to recreate that, but without Swift UI, just for normal Swift code. And that's actually one of the packages I have here. It's a preview package right here. And the source is all there. You can see it. It's very simple to use. And the only thing you have to do is just write this piece of code in the view controller in the file where you want to present. And then you have your live preview, which you can use. Of course, the canvas in this situation has some bugs, so be wary. But for your day-to-day development, you can use it definitely, and it's going to speed up things very, very much. So you can see here on my canvas here, I have sort of a very simple design and very simple data sets. It's all, of course, dummy data. And I have a banner up here, and then I have a list here, a horizontal list, and then I have a grid down there. So this is our first data set that we're going to go through today. And basically, what I was talking before is that if I go to this JSON file, and now imagine this JSON file is coming from the server, it's local for obvious reasons, but imagine this JSON file is coming from the server. Now, there is a layout, there's a field called layout, and it has vertical or horizontal. And then there is a field called cell, which is basically the component, and there are banner, list, or grids, as you can see down here. And then we have items. And something that's very important in this kind of data handling is that items for whatever entity in your application you're going to use items, they're going to be one model, and they're going to have different sort of data displayed on the screen based on what the server is telling you to display on the screen. So if the server is telling me, okay, I have a layout which is vertical, and then there's a cell of type banner, it doesn't matter what type of data this is. This could be a product down here, this could be a category, this could be anything else. And basically what I see here is a vertical banner. And then there is a horizontal list. If it's a horizontal list, it doesn't have to have price or name. It doesn't have to have anything else. It just, it doesn't have to be a product or a category or any other entity. It basically has to be an entity that we've already talked about. And you make the screen share larger and move down the webcams in the corner. Okay. And so,
yeah, no, so we can't do that. It's one of the functions on Crowdcast that they're working on to move around the cameras. So unfortunately not.
All right then. And so I have another, I'm going to show you another data set, and it's our second data set. And as you can see, I have a live preview here. So it's going to update even without a build in here. And the second data set is practically the same. It's just different lists, and it has a different data set. And what you're going to see is sort of a different take and different components that we can utilize with the same data that's coming from the server. Again, the server is telling me the layout. The server is telling me the type of cell that I'm going to use, and the server is telling me what items I'm going to use. Their IDs, their images, everything that I need to render that page is coming from the server. I have no say in it, and I don't need to have a say in it. But just to give you a better feel of this, let's just go to our third data set and just create something together. So right now in this preview section, you're going to see that, okay, there's a horizontal grid, there's just images in there, and there's just a list down there. Nothing special, nothing too hard to implement. And then we just go to our data set. Now, this is the data set coming from the server. Now, imagine that a designer is sitting beside you, and he or she is just telling you, okay, let's see what's going to look better in our application. And maybe your designer is just telling you that, okay, what if we put a banner instead of a grid in the beginning of the like the page? So you just change the cell type from grid to banner. and you run, or you just go back to your live preview and it's a different entity. And now maybe you want to feature this first item in your list. You want to feature like maybe this is that trend, this is that gene product that you want to feature for your application. So you just go there and you just add, maybe I want to add a name to it. So I'm just gonna put this awesome gene, and I'm gonna just get another build again. You can go back to the canvas, and then you see that, okay, our view has changed. That one product is featured, and it has maybe a name there, or you can add like a price. And so we just add a price. The JSON files are tricky. And I'm going to be maybe 23. See, beautiful dollar currency. I'm just going to check the data, and it looks good. So you can see that, okay, there's a price here and there is a name. You can maybe just utilize different models, and just if you're going to show maybe a brand on your product cells, and then you're going to show maybe a category on your other cells, you can just have them read them from like the same sort of field, like call it description, call it subtitle, whatever you want to call it. And then in different components, you're just going to handle that in different like sort of views. And then you're going to be able to just have any view, feature it if you want, and then just show it to the user, and drastically change like the sort of thing that's happening, and with your sales as well. So maybe I just want to have here, I want to even feature this first product even more. So I'm just going to write this awesome gene collection. And then I'm just going to run, and I'm going to crash. And then you can see awesome gene collection displayed up there. Or you can just go back to your canvas and resume the preview and see it all happen there. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
So Amir Hassin has said, how do you implement the layout of your collection views?
Well, basically, that's a part of code you guys didn't see very much. I have a custom layout developed, which you can see in the GitHub. It's sort of complicated, but I'm sure you can figure it out. And then in the like the inner components, there are flow layouts implemented. So pretty simple, pretty easy to implement. So yeah, you can check that out.
Nice one. Well, look, we'll leave it open for a little bit longer, but maybe not so many questions. Certainly grateful for. Oh, here we go. We got one here. Param has asked, what is your approach to handling different screen orientations?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Well, to put it mildly, and to put it in iOS, we have something called size classes in iOS. So size classes are very specific to each device. And then maybe iPad devices can have multiple size classes, maybe in multitask mode. So we have this platform, and then we have to integrate it in our code. We actually have a code base which is handling it for us. I'm afraid I can't share that with you guys, but the code base is basically taking that size class, and by the orientation change, the size class changes as well, usually when it needs to. So we simply just put our layouts and whatever we need to handle based on those size classes. And when they change, we get a notification, and we just change how we handle that view in that new situation.